The scorching Arizona sun cast long shadows across Silverton Ranch as another world-renowned animal trainer stumbled out of the reinforced arena, his confidence shattered and his expensive equipment destroyed. Maxwell Silverton, tech billionaire turned cattle magnate, watched from his air-conditioned observation tower with mounting frustration as the latest expert admitted defeat against Black One, the most dangerous bull in the American Southwest. Black One stood motionless in the center of the arena, his massive 2,400-pound frame radiating an aura of pure menace. The jet-black Brahmin bull had earned his fearsome reputation through 18 months of systematic violence, destroying everything and everyone who dared enter his domain. His dark eyes burned with intelligence and fury, as if he understood exactly what humans expected from him and took sadistic pleasure in crushing their hopes. "Mr. Silverton, I've worked with aggressive animals for 25 years, gasped Roberto Santos, the latest trainer to fail, clutching his injured wrist. "That bull isn't just wild, he's calculating every move. He studies his opponents, waits for weakness, then strikes with surgical precision. I've never encountered anything like him." Maxwell's jaw clenched as he calculated another fortune disappearing with Santos's departure. The 58-year-old billionaire had built his empire through innovation and the unshakable belief that every problem could be solved with enough money and determination. But Black One had become the one challenge that defied his vast resources, the one opponent who seemed to mock his wealth and power. The bull's reign of terror had begun 14 months earlier when Maxwell purchased him from a bankrupted Mexican ranch for $750,000, believing he was acquiring a prize specimen with championship bloodlines. But from the moment Black One arrived at Silverton Ranch, it became clear that this was no ordinary animal. He attacked without warning, destroyed reinforced barriers with methodical precision, and seemed to take active pleasure in terrorizing anyone who approached his territory. Traditional training methods had failed catastrophically. Gentle approaches were met with explosive violence, while aggressive techniques only intensified Black One's fury. The bull had hospitalized 23 handlers, caused over $400,000 in property damage, and developed such a fearsome reputation that even the most fearless professionals began declining Maxwell's increasingly desperate offers. "Sir, we need to discuss the insurance situation," warned his ranch manager, David Kim, as they watched Black One systematically destroy another set of arena equipment. "3 more companies have canceled our policies. The liability exposure is becoming impossible to manage." But Maxwell refused to accept defeat. His reputation as an innovative problem solver was at stake, and admitting failure wasn't in his vocabulary. That's when he made the announcement that would electrify the entire ranching industry and attract international attention. "I'm offering $1 million to anyone who can successfully tame Black One," Maxwell declared at a press conference that drew reporters from across the country. $1 million cash to the person who can ride him for 60 seconds without being thrown or injured. The announcement created a media frenzy. Professional rodeo champions, animal behaviorists, circus performers, and thrill seekers began arriving at Silverton Ranch within hours. Maxwell's phone never stopped ringing with calls from people claiming revolutionary training methods, supernatural animal communication abilities, or simply the desperate courage to risk their lives for a chance at instant wealth. But as the weeks turned into months, the $1 million challenge proved as impossible as Maxwell's previous attempts. World champion bull riders lasted mere seconds before being violently ejected. Renowned animal psychologists fled after brief encounters with Black One's intelligence and rage. Even a famous horse whisperer from Montana took one look at the bull and quietly withdrew his application. Each failure only seemed to increase Black One's aggression, as if the parade of challengers reinforced his belief that humans were enemies to be conquered. His reputation spread beyond the ranching community, attracting documentary filmmakers, animal rights activists, and curious tourists who turned Maxwell's private obsession into a public spectacle that was damaging his carefully cultivated image. "Maxwell, we need to address the public relations nightmare," urged his attorney Patricia Wells during one of their emergency meetings. "The media is portraying you as an obsessed billionaire who values his pride over human safety. If someone dies attempting this challenge, the lawsuits could destroy everything you've built." But Maxwell had never been deterred by public opinion. He was driven by pure stubbornness and the absolute conviction that Black One's defiance was a personal insult that demanded resolution. The bull had become more than an animal problem. He was a symbol of everything Maxwell couldn't control, couldn't purchase, couldn't force to submit to his will. By late summer, the statistics were staggering. 47 attempts had been made on the $1 million challenge. Total successful rides, 0. Medical expenses, $280,000. Property damage, $600,000. The specialized facility Maxwell had built to contain Black One resembled a fortress more than a ranch, with reinforced steel barriers, emergency medical equipment, and round-the-clock security. Black One seemed to revel in his reputation as the untamable force that had humbled the mighty Maxwell Silverton. The bull's intelligence was undeniable. He appeared to understand the value of the equipment he destroyed, targeting the most expensive items with almost supernatural accuracy. It was as if he was actively trying to bankrupt his owner through calculated destruction. 93 total challengers, David reported during their morning briefing. Success rate, 0%. We're approaching the anniversary of the challenge announcement, and the media is planning retrospective coverage that won't be flattering. Maxwell stood at his observation window, watching Black One patrol his territory with the confidence of an undefeated champion. The bull's presence filled the arena, and his every movement radiated the power of an animal who had never been truly challenged. But Maxwell's obsession ran deeper than pride or money. He genuinely believed that conquering Black One would prove something fundamental about human determination and the power of wealth to overcome any obstacle. As autumn approached, Maxwell prepared for what he secretly feared might be his final attempt to solve the Black One problem. He had contacted every expert in the world, exhausted every conventional approach, and invested a fortune in specialized equipment and facilities. If his $1 million challenge couldn't attract someone capable of taming the bull, Maxwell would have to consider the unthinkable, admitting defeat. But fate had other plans. The solution to Maxwell's impossible challenge wouldn't come from the world of professional animal training or expensive expertise. It would arrive in the most unexpected form imaginable, through the pure heart and unique perspective of a 10-year-old boy who saw the world differently than everyone else, and would teach Maxwell that sometimes the most powerful connections happen between the most unlikely pairs. The crisp October morning that would change everything began with the arrival of a modest white van at Silverton Ranch's imposing gates. Inside sat 10-year-old Ethan Walker, a boy whose autism made him experience the world through heightened senses and emotional frequencies that others couldn't perceive. He was accompanying his mother, Dr. Rachel Walker, a veterinary behaviorist who had been reluctantly called in by Maxwell's desperate ranch staff after 47 failed attempts to tame Black One. Ethan rarely spoke, communicated primarily through drawings and gestures, and had an extraordinary ability to sense the emotional states of animals from remarkable distances. His mother had initially refused Maxwell's consultation request, knowing her son's sensitivity to chaotic environments, but the substantial fee would help fund her research into animal trauma recovery. Maxwell met them at the main house, his impatience barely concealed behind practiced politeness. Dr. Walker, I appreciate you coming on such short notice. I've read your research on animal behavioral modification, and I'm hoping you might have insights that previous experts have missed. Dr. Thigh. Walker studied Maxwell's haggard appearance, noting the stress lines that months of obsession had etched into his face. Mr. Silverton, I need to be clear that my methods focus on understanding rather than domination. If you're looking for someone to break this bull's spirit, you've called the wrong person. While the adults talked, Ethan wandered away from the conversation, drawn by something the others couldn't perceive. A low-frequency vibration seemed to pulse from somewhere beyond the main buildings, calling to his heightened sensitivity like a beacon. Without conscious decision, he began walking toward the restricted area where Black One's fortress-like arena dominated the landscape. Ethan, stay close, Dr. Walker called, but her son was already moving with the purposeful determination she recognized from his most intense focus states. Something had captured his complete attention in a way that rarely happened with anything other than his special interests. Maxwell followed, expecting to redirect another curious visitor away from the dangerous area. But as they approached the arena's observation deck, his irritation transformed into amazement. Black One, who typically paced his territory with restless aggression, had stopped moving entirely and was staring directly at Ethan through the reinforced barriers. "That's impossible," Maxwell whispered. "He's never shown interest in visitors before. Usually he charges the fence when strangers approach." But Black One wasn't charging. Instead, the massive bull moved slowly toward the barrier, his usual fury replaced by something Maxwell had never seen before: curiosity. The bull's dark eyes were fixed on Ethan with an intensity that seemed to transcend normal animal behavior. Ethan approached the fence with the same calm certainty he showed when working with his mother's rescue animals. He made no sudden movements, produced no sounds, but simply stood before the barrier and looked directly into Black One's eyes. The connection was immediate and electric, as if two beings who had been searching for each other had finally found their match. Dr. Walker watched in professional fascination as her son began exhibiting behaviors she had never seen before. Ethan placed his small hand flat against the fence, and Black One immediately pressed his massive nose against the same spot from the other side. The bull's entire demeanor had transformed. The rage that had defined him for 18 months had vanished, replaced by a gentleness that seemed impossible for such a powerful creature. "How is this happening?" Maxwell demanded, his voice tight with disbelief. "That bull has attacked everyone who's ever entered his space. He's injured 23 people, destroyed hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment, and now he's acting like a pet with a 10-year-old boy." Ethan began making soft humming sounds, a self-soothing behavior that Dr. Walker knew indicated deep emotional engagement. But the tone seemed to have an immediate effect on Black One. The bull's breathing slowed, his massive shoulders relaxed, and he began producing low, rhythmic rumbles that seemed to respond to Ethan's vocalizations. "They're communicating," Dr. Walker breathed, pulling out her phone to document the unprecedented interaction. "I've studied animal behavior for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Your bull isn't aggressive, he's been trying to communicate, and no one understood his language until now." Maxwell stared at the impossible scene unfolding before him. The most expensive trainers in the world had failed to achieve in months what this autistic boy had accomplished in minutes. Black One, the terror of the Southwest, was displaying the patience and gentleness of a creature who had finally found someone who understood him. Ethan pulled a small sketch pad from his jacket and began drawing with remarkable speed and precision. The image that emerged showed two figures, a large dark shape representing Black One and a smaller figure representing himself. But surrounding both figures were flowing lines that seemed to represent energy or emotion, suggesting a connection that existed beyond normal perception. "What does the drawing mean?" Maxwell asked Dr. Walker, though he was beginning to understand that traditional explanations might not apply to what they were witnessing. "Ethan processes emotions and energy differently than neurotypical people," Dr. Walker explained. "He's showing me that he and Black One are connected on a level that most people can't access. The bull isn't aggressive. He's been frustrated because no one could understand what he was trying to communicate." For 30 minutes, boy and bull maintained their extraordinary connection through the barrier. Black One remained perfectly still, his attention completely focused on Ethan, as if the boy were the most important thing in his world. When other ranch hands approached, the bull barely acknowledged them, but his eyes never left Ethan's face. David Kim arrived with a security team, expecting to find another dangerous situation requiring intervention. Instead, he discovered the most peaceful scene in Black One's territory since the bull's arrival. "Mr. Silverton, what's happening here? We've never seen him behave this way." Maxwell shook his head in wonder. "David, I think we've been approaching this problem completely wrong. We've been trying to dominate Black One, but maybe what he needed was someone who could communicate with him on his own terms." As the afternoon progressed, Ethan's connection with Black One only deepened. The boy seemed to understand the bull's emotional state with supernatural accuracy, adjusting his own behavior to maintain the peaceful interaction. When Black One showed signs of thirst, Ethan pointed toward the water trough. When the bull appeared tired, Ethan sat down near the fence, and Black One immediately settled into a resting position. "Ethan has a gift," Dr. Walker told Maxwell as they watched the continuing interaction. "Children with autism often have enhanced sensitivity to nonverbal communication. He's reading emotional cues from Black One that trained professionals have been missing." Maxwell felt a fundamental shift in his understanding of the situation. His $1 million challenge had been based on the assumption that Black One needed to be conquered, but maybe the bull simply needed to be understood. The most expensive experts in the world had failed because they were trying to solve the wrong problem. As the sun began to set, Ethan finally stepped back from the fence. Black One immediately moved to maintain visual contact, his massive head following the boy's movement with obvious reluctance to end their connection. When Ethan waved goodbye, the bull rumbled softly in response, a sound that seemed to carry genuine affection. "Dr. Walker, I need to ask you something," Maxwell said as they prepared to leave. "Would you consider bringing Ethan back tomorrow? I think your son might be the key to understanding what Black One has been trying to tell us all along." Dr. Walker studied her son, who seemed more relaxed and content than she had seen him in months. "Mr. Silverton, Ethan doesn't usually respond well to repeated visits to new places, but I've never seen him connect with anything the way he connected with your bull. If you're willing to follow his lead rather than forcing your agenda, then yes, we'll come back." As they drove away from Silverton Ranch, Maxwell stood at the arena fence watching Black One, who had returned to his usual pacing but with a different quality, less agitated, more thoughtful, as if the brief encounter with Ethan had awakened something that had been dormant for too long. For the first time in 18 months, Maxwell felt genuine hope that his impossible challenge might have a solution. But it wouldn't come from dominance or expensive training methods. It would come from a 10-year-old boy who saw the world differently and had somehow found the key to unlocking Black One's true nature. The following morning brought with it a transformation that no one at Silverton Ranch could have anticipated. Black One, who had spent 18 months in a state of constant agitation, stood calmly at the arena fence as if waiting for someone specific. When Ethan's van appeared in the distance, the bull's behavior changed dramatically. His head lifted with obvious recognition, and he began moving toward the gate with purposeful anticipation. Maxwell watched from his observation deck as Dr. Walker and Ethan approached the arena, his skepticism warring with desperate hope. "David, have you ever seen him behave like this before? He's actually eager to see someone." David Kim shook his head in amazement. "Sir, in all the time Black One has been here, he's never shown positive anticipation about anything. He's always been defensive, aggressive, ready to fight. But look at him now. He's acting like he's waiting for a friend." Ethan walked directly to the fence with the same calm certainty he had shown the previous day. The moment Black One saw him, the bull moved as close to the barrier as possible, lowering his massive head in a gesture of submission that no human had ever elicited from him. The connection was immediate and profound, as if they were continuing a conversation that had been temporarily interrupted rather than meeting for only the second time. Dr. Walker began documenting the interaction with scientific precision, noting behavioral patterns that defied conventional understanding of animal psychology. "Maxwell, what we're witnessing challenges everything we know about interspecies communication. Ethan isn't just calming Black One, he's establishing a genuine relationship based on mutual understanding." What happened next left everyone speechless. Ethan approached the arena gate and began working the complex latch system with focused determination. Before anyone could intervene, he had opened the gate and was walking calmly into the arena with Black One, the most dangerous bull in the American Southwest. "Ethan, no!" Dr. Walker cried out, but Maxwell caught her arm. "Wait," he said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "Look at Black One." The bull stood completely motionless as Ethan approached, his massive frame radiating gentleness instead of the fury that had defined him for so long. When Ethan reached out his small hand, Black One gently nuzzled it with his enormous nose, the same creature who had hospitalized 23 professionals, now displaying the patience of a beloved pet with a child. Ethan began walking around the arena, and Black One followed him with perfect obedience, responding to subtle gestures and changes in the boy's posture that others could barely perceive. When Ethan stopped, the bull stopped. When Ethan turned left, Black One turned left. It was as if they were connected by an invisible understanding that transcended species boundaries. "This is impossible," breathed Patricia Wells, Maxwell's attorney, who had arrived expecting to discuss liability issues. "That bull has caused millions in damages and injuries, and now he's following a 10-year-old boy like a trained dog." Dr. Walker was frantically taking notes, recognizing that she was witnessing something that would revolutionize understanding of autism and animal communication. Ethan processes sensory information differently than neurotypical people. He's reading micro-expressions, energy patterns, and emotional frequencies that most humans can't detect. Black One has been trying to communicate all along, but no one understood his language until now. As the morning progressed, Ethan's connection with Black One revealed layers of complexity that amazed everyone present. The boy seemed to understand the bull's every need and emotion with supernatural accuracy. When Black One showed signs of stress, Ethan would place his hand on the bull's neck and hum softly until the tension disappeared. When the bull appeared playful, Ethan would engage in gentle games that channeled the massive animal's energy in positive directions. Maxwell found himself questioning 18 months of assumptions about Black One's nature. Dr. Walker, are you saying that all this time the bull wasn't actually aggressive? That he was just frustrated because no one could understand what he was trying to communicate? That's exactly what I'm saying, Doctor, Walker replied, watching her son guide Black One through a series of movements that resembled an elaborate dance. Autism often comes with enhanced empathy for nonverbal communication. Ethan can sense emotional states that trained professionals miss entirely. Black One wasn't trying to hurt people, he was trying to connect with them. And when they couldn't understand him, he became increasingly frustrated. The revelation hit Maxwell like a physical blow. He had spent nearly $2 million trying to solve a problem that didn't exist. Black One wasn't a monster to be tamed. He was a highly intelligent animal who had been desperately trying to communicate with handlers who couldn't understand his language. So all the trainers, all the experts, all the equipment, we were approaching this completely wrong? Maxwell asked, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. Dr. Walker nodded. You were trying to dominate an animal who wanted to cooperate. Ethan succeeded where others failed because he didn't try to control Black One. He tried to understand him. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan's interaction with Black One evolved into something that resembled a performance. The boy would gesture, and the bull would respond with precise movements that demonstrated incredible intelligence and training capability. It became clear that Black One had always possessed the ability to work with humans. He simply needed someone who could communicate with him on his own terms. Ethan is teaching us that intelligence takes many forms, Dr. Walker explained to the growing crowd of ranch hands and observers. What we've labeled as disability in my son is actually a different way of processing information that allows him to connect with Black One in ways that neurotypical people cannot. Maxwell watched in fascination as Ethan guided Black One through increasingly complex behaviors, each one demonstrating the bull's remarkable intelligence and willingness to cooperate when properly understood. The animal that had terrorized dozens of professional trainers was now following the gentle guidance of a 10-year-old boy who had never received formal training in animal handling. Mr. Silverton, called out Rebecca Santos, a documentary filmmaker who had been covering the $1 Million Challenge. Are you prepared to award the prize money to Ethan? He's clearly achieved what no one else could accomplish. Maxwell looked at Ethan, who was sitting peacefully beside Black One in the center of the arena, both of them completely relaxed in each other's presence. The boy had indeed solved the impossible challenge, but not through domination or traditional training methods. He had succeeded through understanding, empathy, and a form of communication that transcended conventional approaches. The $1 Million Challenge was based on the wrong premise, Maxwell announced to the assembled crowd. I offered money to anyone who could tame Black One, but Ethan has shown us that the bull never needed to be tamed. He needed to be understood. As the sun began to set over Silverton Ranch, Maxwell made a decision that would change not just his own perspective, but potentially revolutionize how the world understood both autism and animal communication. The boy who had been dismissed by society as different had proven that his differences were actually extraordinary gifts that could bridge gaps others couldn't even perceive. The breakthrough had occurred not through force or expense, but through the pure understanding of a child who saw the world differently and had found a kindred spirit in the most unlikely place. Maxwell's impossible challenge had been solved, but the real victory was the lesson that sometimes the most profound connections happen between those who have been misunderstood by the world around them. 6 months after Ethan's breakthrough with Black One, Silverton Ranch had transformed into something unprecedented in the world of animal training and autism research. The fortress-like arena had been replaced with open pastures where Black One roamed freely, his aggression a distant memory. The bull who had once terrorized professional trainers now served as a gentle ambassador for a revolutionary understanding of communication that transcended traditional boundaries. Maxwell stood in his redesigned observation area, watching Ethan work with Black One in what had become their weekly routine. The boy, now 11, had developed an extraordinary partnership with the bull that continued to amaze everyone who witnessed it. Their connection had evolved beyond simple cooperation into something that resembled genuine friendship, built on mutual respect and understanding. "The transformation is remarkable," observed Dr. A. Jennifer Hayes, a leading autism researcher who had traveled from Johns Hopkins to study Ethan's unique abilities. "This boy has challenged everything we thought we knew about autism spectrum disorders. His connection with Black One demonstrates that what we often label as limitations are actually different forms of intelligence." Dr. Walker nodded, her own research having taken on new dimensions since discovering her son's extraordinary gift. "Ethan processes emotional and sensory information in ways that allow him to communicate with animals on levels that neurotypical people cannot access. He's not overcoming his autism to connect with Black One. He's using his autism as a strength." The ranch had become a pilgrimage site for families with autistic children, animal behaviorists, and researchers from around the world. Each visitor left with a transformed understanding of neurodiversity and the potential for connection that exists beyond conventional communication methods. Ethan had become living proof that differences could be superpowers when properly understood and supported. Maxwell's own transformation had been equally dramatic. The billionaire who had once believed that every problem could be solved through force and money had discovered that his greatest success came from simply getting out of the way and allowing understanding to flourish. He had restructured his entire operation around principles of patience, empathy, and respect for different forms of intelligence. "Mr. Silverton, the documentary crew from National Geographic, is here for their follow-up interview," announced David Kim, who had become the ranch's director of special programs. "They want to capture how both Ethan and Black One have changed over the past 6 months." The media attention had been overwhelming but overwhelmingly positive. Ethan's story had inspired countless families dealing with autism, showing them that their children's differences could be gifts rather than obstacles. The million-dollar challenge that had begun as Maxwell's obsession with dominance had become a symbol of hope for anyone who had ever felt misunderstood or undervalued. Black One, now known affectionately as Blackie to the regular visitors, had become the most famous bull in America. His transformation from feared aggressor to gentle giant had captured the public imagination and challenged assumptions about animal behavior. More importantly, his relationship with Ethan had demonstrated that intelligence and emotional connection could transcend species barriers when approached with genuine understanding. "Ethan, can you show us how you first connected with Blackie?" asked Sarah Chen, the documentary director, as cameras rolled. The question had been asked hundreds of times, but Ethan's response remained consistent and profound. The boy approached Black One with the same calm certainty he had shown during their first meeting. The bull immediately lowered his massive head, and Ethan placed his small hand on the animal's forehead. Without words, they established the same profound connection that had amazed observers for months. "People think I'm special because I can talk to Blackie," Ethan said in his quiet voice, speaking more fluently than he had before his friendship with the bull began. "But really, Blackie taught me that I was already special. He helped me understand that being different isn't being broken." Dr. Walker wiped away tears as she watched her son's confidence and communication skills continue to develop through his relationship with Black One. The bull had become more than a friend. He had become a bridge that allowed Ethan to connect with the human world in ways that had previously seemed impossible. Maxwell addressed the cameras with the humility of a man who had learned that his greatest achievement came from admitting he was wrong. "I spent nearly $2 million trying to solve a problem that didn't exist. Ethan showed me that Black One was never the problem. My inability to understand him was the problem." Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. The ranch's visitor program had become a model for autism education and animal therapy programs worldwide. Families would bring their autistic children to meet Ethan and Black One, often discovering abilities and connections they had never imagined possible. The boy who had once been seen as limited was now inspiring others to recognize their own unlimited potential. The beautiful thing about Ethan's gift, explained Dr. Hayes to the documentary crew, is that it's not unique to him. Many individuals with autism have enhanced sensitivity to nonverbal communication. Ethan's success with Black One is showing us that we need to look for different forms of intelligence rather than trying to force everyone into neurotypical communication patterns. As the afternoon session ended, Ethan sat beside Black One in their favorite spot under the old oak tree. The bull's massive presence provided a sense of security and understanding that had helped the boy develop confidence in his own abilities. Their friendship had become a symbol of hope for anyone who had ever felt different or misunderstood. Maxwell approached them with the same respect he had learned to show all forms of intelligence. "Ethan, I want to thank you for teaching me that the most important connections happen when we stop trying to change others and start trying to understand them." Ethan looked up with the clear-eyed wisdom that had amazed adults since his breakthrough with Black One. "Mr. Maxwell, Blackie taught me that sometimes the scariest things are just lonely things that need a friend. Maybe that's true for people too." The documentary would go on to win multiple awards and inspire legislation supporting autism research and animal therapy programs. But for Maxwell, the real victory was personal. He had learned that his greatest success came not from conquering challenges, but from creating environments where understanding could flourish. As the sun set over Silverton Ranch, Ethan and Black One remained in their favorite spot, two unlikely friends who had found in each other the acceptance and understanding that the world had been slow to provide. Their bond had proven that intelligence takes many forms, that communication transcends words, and that sometimes the most profound connections happen between those who have been misunderstood by everyone else. The million-dollar challenge that had begun with frustration and desperation had ended with hope and understanding. Maxwell had learned that the most valuable things in life couldn't be purchased. They could only be discovered through patience, empathy, and the courage to see the world through different eyes. Ethan had never claimed the million-dollar prize because the real treasure had been the friendship that taught him he was perfect exactly as he was. And Black One had found something more valuable than freedom. He had found understanding, acceptance, and a boy who saw him not as a problem to be solved, but as a friend to be treasured.